the issues that were kind of gnawing at you that you were writing about. And you said that the first chapter, right? The dear white people, the idea of the blondes, right? That was the first thing you wrote.
Yes, yes, that was the first thing I wrote. Um, that was just, I mean, the very first idea I mean about this novel that that I knew belonged to the novel and all right. I mean, as I said, it's I mean this voice and this voice that came to me in this
Mm.
wonderful, powerful moment of inspiration and then I just began writing and that was actually the very first yeah first piece of the novel that I wrote. Yeah.
Well, when this book gets all the awards and your future books get all the awards like that, do you still have that BlackBerry? Like that's gonna be like in the
Yeah, I
Hall of
still have the
Fame. That's gonna be
BlackBerry.
like in the museum or whatever, you know?
I hope so. Anyway, I hope so. Yeah,
Like
yeah,
an artifact,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I can
That's
show you if you want anyway, but yeah, later anyway. Yeah.
that's that's awesome. So yeah, like we talked about the first part of the book is, starts off with like it's like dear white people, and it's just about like Andy saying like I love blondes, right? I
Yeah.
absolutely love blondes. And it's I saw one of the reviews of the book calls it, I don't know how you pronounce it, tragic comedy.
Yeah, tragic comedy. Yeah.
And I mean, there is definitely some humor, for sure. Just like in that it is eccentric, in that it is, I don't know if sarcasm's the word, but just like I guess satire.
Yeah.
I've tried in small batches, and it's really, really hard to be funny on the page. How did you pull that off? The
I
comedy
mean,
part of it.
yeah. I mean, honestly, I actually didn't know that the book was funny or hilarious or whatever, or satirical. Honestly, I was just writing, and I mean, it was much later on that I realized, oh, that while writing, I would chuckle now and then, but I just thought, oh, I was just chuckling from just recognition, right? I'm recognizing where some of these
Sure.
things were coming from or what I was trying to do and all that. And so it was after I had sent a few chapters of the novel to my agent and then she read it and wrote back to me that, oh, this is so satirical, this is so funny and moving and all that. But so I couldn't believe it. I was asking her like, really, are you sure this is funny? And
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, so it was just purely accidental, but it makes sense because I mean Andy like deals with the novel deals with so many um like very tough issues, really big issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean issues stemming from like uh, I mean the legacy of colonialism. I mean the search for identity, search for self. Um, I mean the legacy of trauma and all that, and that was just like the most engaging way or um, um, like the most engaging way wherever to convey this narrative element to the reader and yeah in a way that it's not off-putting and it's
Right.
fun and because again I mean it stems from who Andy is. He's just this 15-year-old boy. He just wants to have fun, who wants a better life, who has these funny friends and I remember myself too at that age. I mean, although I was very, very introverted, but I mean, yeah, but I mean, just a time of fun too, a time of humor and laughter and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Appreciate that. So, the book is structured into the Five Sorrowful Mysteries. Obviously, that's the title is the Five Sorrowful Mysteries of Andy Africa. And, it's the agony in the garden is the first. I mean, it's fitting that we're talking, a day before Easter, where I want to say all of these take place at what Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and yeah, I mean within 48 hours as far as the Christian calendar goes, if you will. So it's the agony in the garden, the scourging at the pillar, the crowning of thorns, um, the carrying of the cross, and the crucifixion is the last. And then with each of those, there's a theorem, right? And this idea of like a permutation and permutation theory. And I was telling you before we were recording, I'm so impressed at like the mathematicalness of it, if that's a word. Um, but I kind of wonder how permutation theory comes into play. Like, permutation in my basic understanding is the idea of like different ordering of things. Are you trying to get at like the arbitrariness of life in some ways? How why was why was I born here? Why was she born there? Why was the sister born first? Why was that kind of thing? I wonder what you're going with the permutation references.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is a very powerful question. I mean, what the suggestion you made about, I mean, the order and all other things, like why was I born here, the randomness of things, or
Mhm.
how, yeah, that's like a good explanation too. But I think one of the things I was going for, and when writing this book, I mean, I have a background in mathematics. My first degree was in maths. I know, I studied first degree, yeah. My first degree was in mathematics anyway. And so like when writing this book anyway, I began to realize how many things about like being Nigerian, being black, being African, for example. Yeah, actually had so much to do with permutations because
Mhm.
permutations are all about, I mean, giving like a discrete but definite arrangement of things. I
Mhm.
mean, you could have three elements. You could have, let's say, a ball. You could have a water bottle. You could have a kettle. And yeah, but I mean, once you just change the arrangements, you let's say bring the kettle first, and then the ball, and
Mhm.
yeah, and everything is just changed and all like that just brings a change in these elements. Um, and then I was thinking how things like race, for example. I mean, race is just like a permutation. I mean, being black, being white, and all like these are just parts of ourselves that I mean, just the color, like it's just changed and all the change, just different ordering
Mhm.
to who we are as humans and all. Like even and I don't know the things that I'm examining the book. I mean, the sense of duality, identity, and all. And like for example, I see Andy as having these two like selves, this African self, Western self, and all. And these selves are ordered in just different ways, and but in just many other young Africans, many these post-colonial people. Like for example, like my friends and I, when we were young, like we had just this we had these two selves whatever in continual conflict and they were ordered in just different ways. So whenever I was looking at how things like race, class, um, even like the intersectionality of
Mhm.
life and many things have to just do with permutations, the ordering, how things are ordered and all. And that is where that whole motif comes from, and the motif of ordering and the yeah.
Mhm. I appreciate that. So, so early on in the book, we have, with, I'm sorry, remind me of the priest name, Father.
Make man.
Right. Thank you. So Father
Yeah, for
McMahon. So
them.
he has
Yeah.
he's the British, maybe originally Irish, right? The from the UK, and he's been there for I think 39, 40 years at the church. And his niece is Eileen, and she's coming, she's arriving, and it's a big deal. Um, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but that's the big deal that she's coming. There's early descriptions of Andy and his connection with his mom. In many ways, he is everything that she lives for, right? And in other ways, it seems that that he has hurt her. I mean, he physically hurt her, literally hurt her, right, with the cesarean section that needed to be done. Um, that in some ways, rendered her very hurt, and I don't know if the term in the book was like genderless, but like, I mean, we get the impression that did major physical damage when he was born. Is that safe to say?
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, and yeah. Yeah, being genderless, you could say in that sense, but I mean, yeah, but that's gender is a very, very complicated and powerful thing anyway. So we don't
Right.
want to go that far anyway. But yeah, yeah, yeah. Caused her so much damage. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's clear that she's loving. She's also very mysterious. She's been through a lot in her life, and that's to say the least. That's to put it mildly. Um, and so Andy has this ghostly friend, this mysterious friend, this conscience of sorts. I mean, I was a little bit slow on the uptake. It took me a while to realize this is Andy's name spelled backwards. Uh, right?
Yeah.
I mean, do you pronounce it Yidna, or how do you see this compliment, not like as in giving someone compliment, but complimentary, this
Compliment set.
complimentary
Yeah.
person. How would you describe it?
Yeah.
Yidna, or I don't know how you would say his name, say the name even.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, or you could say it now or something,
Okay,
you know. Anyway, I think the reader should pronounce it however they want
there you
anyway.
go.
But um, yeah. So Andy's mother, right, before she has Andy, like 2 years before she has Andy, she um gives birth to a child, like a stillborn baby, you know, and yeah, and so I mean, the trauma of all that anyway.
Mhm.
I think it's a trauma that I mean, she also passed on to Andy in many ways,
Mm-hmm.
which, yeah, and whatever. And so Andy grows up knowing about this brother who he never has, who he never had anyway. Um, and this brother too, and this brother becomes, in fact, his alter ego in many ways because Andy feels that uh, this Idna, because so Andy names his brother Idna, so Andy feels that this Idna is somebody who is his other self, right? His more African self. And he recognizes, he's so self-aware to recognize that he's like a much more Western person. Because I mean, he desires, I mean, Westernization, he desires, I mean, a Western woman, a blonde white woman, and
Mm-hmm.
everything. So Edna is just this African aspect of Andy, is his African self, I know, and who Andy often gets into conversation with. As I said, from the trauma of his mother and all that, that he perceives through the person of Edna anyway, and Edna helps Andy to unspool himself for the reader and to I could think aloud to understand the world and everything and so essentially Edna is just Andy's African self who
Mm-hmm.
because Andy feels that Edna uh, wouldn't wouldn't be loving blondes like he is. That Edna would love Fatima, I mean, his Nigerian best friend and his Nigerian friend anyway. And yeah,
Mm. I appreciate that. Yeah, like I said, I was a little slow in the uptake. I was like, oh, dang, that's the name spelled backwards. Took me a little while to get it. Um, but so I mean, if you're talking about like, his mother as literally his mother, but maybe representative of more, I mean, Andy's literally that's not his given name, but he's given the nickname of Andy Africa. Like, I wonder how much you see Andy as just like a stand-in for like a Pan-Africanism or like a just the African as in like where Chekhov would use someone's last name as like Mr. X or Mr. Blank. I wonder how much you see Andy as just as Andy himself. Andy Aziza, I believe, would be his name,
yeah,
or,
yeah,
or how much you see him as like Andy representative of a bigger group.
yeah. I mean, I think readers who read this book will see how there's like this underlying theme of duality and there are usually these dual structures, sometimes in opposition, sometimes maybe not in direct opposition.
Mm.
Um, I mean, dual structures like science versus faith, science versus the arts,
Mm-hmm.
poetry versus maths, all that kind of stuff. I know. I mean, yeah, Andy Idna, Africa versus the West, so many like oppositions, many dualities like that. And I think in this sense too, yeah, um, and this mother and the sorry, I'm really digressing again because I
That's
want
okay.
to
It's all good. But just kind of like Andy as
yeah.
representative of something bigger, as well as
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
as
Exactly. Sorry.
yeah.
Yeah. I know where I'm going to now. Anyway, so Andy, yeah, and so you could read Andy's character in these dualities, in these oppositions, uh, as Andy, one is this Nigerian boy, this post-colonial object, I know, right? Yeah, and you can also see him as representative of his country, his continent, and yeah, and because if you read the novel, you see there are other like dimensions to the story, like a superhero kind of
Mm,
narrative, like going through the story wherever. Like like Andy sees himself and as well as his friends as these superheroes, and like Zara talks about them about African children, about Africans being superheroes, which is wizards and all that. Um, so so that superhero narrative that he is best placed in a position as a superhero to confront and to defeat the issues facing his community, his country, his continent, um, and these issues these problems uh, are formed or are brought together as a composition in the form of HSVX, like the cause of Africa
mm,
and all that. So Andy is a superhero who is supposed to like defeat HSVX. Yeah, and this is as his destiny and all to do that, to destroy all these forces. HSVX stands for like forces such as colonialism, kleptocracy, slavery, all the like huge negative
Uh-huh.
things, the hyper objects that have befallen Africa and Africans. Um, and also like to also refer to your earlier question about Andy, about Andy's different selves, like Edna too, because Andy's story is also like a superhero story, and we know superheroes also have usually have like this origin stories and
Hmm.
this alter egos and and that is what Edna is to Andy. Like his alter ego, his own alter ego, who he's in constant confrontation, a constant. I mean, he loves this person and he wants to be that person, but he also doesn't want to be that person at the same time, and that's the complications that form the story.
Hmm. So the HXVX is described as a tetragrammaton, shorthand for the curse of Africa. There's even a math formula. It's, Sauron. Help me if I'm saying these words wrong. HXVX equals Sauron plus Thanos, and this idea of the infinity sign that the curse of Africa in some ways is infinite, which obviously is not. Which obviously there's a huge pessimism there, but there's also a big optimism with Zara, right? She's a really interesting character. She's maybe I think she's like 30, right? So she's not like incredibly much way older than him. She's kind of like a cool older sister, aunt type of thing, right? But she's a teacher and she talk about eccentric. She writes she doesn't write, canon literature or whatever. She writes a lot about futurism, right? The idea of like animism mixed with like
Yeah,
Afrofuturism, right? And
yeah, yeah,
and I'm again so impressed by so much you do in this book with the math formulas, with the dualities, the work with Christianity and religion. I'm so impressed that like you're writing within your writing. I mean, there are little poems within, right?
yeah,
There's you have speeches from like the priest, you have speeches from Zara that are like on their own, or like so cool. You're getting into their own personal voice, so many different tones and stuff. But she's one of those people that we all know who's just like she's down to give a lecture at the drop of a hat, right?
yeah.
Like, tell us
Yeah, she's
about
so fun, I know. Yeah.
what how would you define how does she define like anti-futurism, and how did you draw on real life, philosophies and theories, and how much of that is, I guess, fictional?
Yeah, whatever. I mean, and the futurism is just my own personal creation, right? Of course, I mean, standing on the shoulders of wonderful theories on animism. I mean, how Black people, Africans, for example, would reclaimed the the philosophical construct called animism anyway, and Afrofuturism too, and yeah, this huge, wonderful um, way for Black people, for Africans to African Americans anyway, in particular, to like reclaim the history that we never had, the past we never had, and to create a future that we've been denied and all that.
Hmm.
The African Americans and Black people worldwide everywhere have been denied. Anyway,
Sure.
so Zara fuses these two disparate elements, animism, the animistic theory of the world, how the world is animated, everything about the world is sacred, is animated, is alive, is living, and all that. And how, I mean, it has to be, we have to give huge respect to nature, to things around us, and not just to be crazily destructive as we humans are in general. And Afrofuturism too. I mean, as I said, claiming the future, the past, and the future that I mean that we didn't have, we've never had, that Black people have never been like given and all that. Um, um, so all this now, because Andy now on the one hand, Andy like seems to proselytize the West, the Western ideas, all these things that have been fed to him and that has been made to confess and all that. So and then like Zara is presents this counter narrative to
Hmm.
his very Western conceptualization of the world. Zara brings a much more African, yeah, philosophy and so because I'm also interested again in duality. I don't like I'm not usually invested in stories that seem to just take one slant, tell
Sure.
it like I mean the novel, because I think the novel should present the world in its different facets, in whether opposing, however conflicting, I mean they are, and
Hmm.
so that's what I'm trying to do in this novel. I mean, and sings the praise of the West. He wants to be white. He wants a blonde girl. And Zara like, oh, like, hey, as an African, as a black boy, you are powerful. You've come from this history that you've been denied,
Mm,
that's that Western religions will ever have denied. I mean, has denied you, but you've come from this wonderful heritage and things you should be proud of and things you should use to create a wonderful future for yourself.
mm.
And she talked about how Africa has, I mean, it's the future of civilization, and despite how pessimistic things might seem, yeah, like that is what it is, and yeah, and that is what I mean. We young people, writers and intellectuals and scientists and all, like we try to make, yeah, yeah, Africa to be.
I appreciate that. The friends are so well drawn. There's Morocco.
Yeah.
Right, he's the rapper. I was hoping he
Yeah,
would have written some lyrics, but that's all right. I want to get an idea. No, I want to get an idea what kind of rapper is. I guess he's pretty good, right? I mean, he had some really good some fans for sure. He had some groupies for sure. Um,
yeah,
right. We have Slim, we have Fatima, who you referenced, like, she's described as, I mean, she's for sure been victimized in her life. She's
yeah,
also like Andy, she's incredibly gifted. I mean, they have really deep, profound talks about all kinds of things, science and religion. And, it seems like she would be the perfect match for Andy. She's beautiful, but she's, friendly and incredibly, like we talked about, gifted. But he talks about this you capitalize the IT
yeah,
that keeps him away. And I think a lot of that's what you're talking about, this Western desire, etc. Um, how the term is drooks? Is that like
yeah. Drugs, yeah,
buddy, homie? Like, how would you describe drooks?
yeah, yeah. Drugs. I mean, it's not my creation, right? It's a word from anyway, it's not in popular consciousness, whatever, but it's a word from um, Anthony Burgess's novel, A Clockwork Orange. Yeah.
Ah,
So it's yeah. So like a lot of references to, I mean, to Clockwork Orange, and but
mm,
the word is used. Yeah, it's like a popular consciousness. People use it every day and out,
uh,
so I wanted to draw from that, from to reference that to them because I'm hugely interested in intertextuality, how texts
hmm,
speak to each other, reference each other, and all that. I mean, because in that book now, I will see young people who have been made to become antisocial or whatever. Like, I
mm,
mean, they go around committing ultra violence, and in a way, that's what Andy, in a way, from his huge love for his country and his community, that's like what he he's that is what he seems to be doing anyway. That I mean, convenient ultra violence against his community, like kind of a kind
mm,
of a philosophical ultra violence, whatever.
yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, from Anthony Burgess, yeah, wonderful book, Clockwork Orange.
Oh, I love the illusions. There's so many references. I'm not necessarily a Star Wars
Yeah,
fan, but great Star Wars references, and just I love the pop culture references, and it's
yeah,
very contemporary, but it's also just classic, literature.
yeah,
You talk about the dualities, there's so Slim is openly gay, right? He's openly homosexual, and it's really cool that, like, for his
maybe not,
friends.
yeah,
No,
maybe not that
I'm
open
I'm I'm
because
sorry. You're right. You're right. Right.
yeah,
Right. With his friends,
because
with
yeah,
his friends, he
yeah,
is.
yeah,
Thank you. You're right. Of course, of course. He's not out and
yeah,
about in the town, in the
yeah,
city.
yes, because it can't be right, and
Mhm.
yeah,
Right. And I mean, towards the end of the book, they're ramping up, attacks against homosexuals, and he definitely has reason to
yeah,
be scared, unfortunately. But like Moraka, more so than Andy a little bit. I mean, these are kind of like the stereotypical, just like dudes, right? They're just, they're talking about their conquests and trying to get tail and all of that, right? But it's
yeah,
pretty cool that, like, with Slim, they're not homophobic. It's like, all right, cool, man. Like, he's just one of the guys. So there's a duality there where within that small group, within his friends, it's he has a breakup when is it Wonder, leaves him. They feel bad for him just like they would anyone else. Yet the duality is that in the greater society and parts of society, he unfortunately he needs to be scared, right? Because there are attacks and such.
yeah,
So the part sorry, so part one um ends with Olga Oliver, and he is representative of people who have tried to get to Europe. He's gone across the Sahara. He was beaten, I believe, right? Beaten badly.
Yeah.
And at the end, he's someone that they make fun of him. He all he can say is water. He's like almost like literally like a shell of his former self. Later in the
Yeah.
book, he comes back to health a little bit, but he's just really like a stark reminder at the end of part one about kind of what might be consequences for leaving, when of course they do see positive consequences too in talking to OK, etc.
Yeah.
The party, right? The party, Eileen comes and it's like, so they're at the parish, the compound and son. I mean, it's like it's the parting of the seas, right? When she comes out, it's like she's an angel or a dignitary, right? Princess Diana all over again or something.
Yeah.
Man. And Andy can't believe it. He meets her pretty much right away and they start talking about poetry. Um, but there's somewhat the scene at the party, which is a longer scene, but it's so well drawn. There's Andy and he's watching his mom stooping down, keep
Yeah.
emphasizing the word stooping, and he just doesn't like that, right? He feels, why is she doing that? She's a photographer, but why is she stooping
Yeah.
before these people,
Yeah.
right?
For these white
Um,
people. Yeah.
yeah, and there's Chief Onu and throwing the money, and there's the choir. Um, Andy kind of like talking with the priest who is seeing the people dancing. He's just kind of like, what is going on? Talk about a surreal scene. And again, Palm Sunday was 6, 7 days ago. It's like Eileen's entrance is like Jesus coming into Jerusalem, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so I
Yeah.
I got to think there's the satire there. You know, and Andy even talks about with Eileen, like, you know, whether it's to be white, whether it's to be different. It's like, why did my soul choose this body? The
Yeah.
idea of like the first and the greatest mistake. So I guess there's so much coolness about how you like flip the classic scenes, right? There's this, Eileen who is, she's not a colonizer, but she comes from the colonizers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, literally from a missionary family, and obviously there's been a very problematic history of missionaries.
Yeah.
Um, and so I just wonder about this idea, even later on in the book when they go to a restaurant together and she is just treated like an absolute queen. And it's kind of like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
Andy, what do you want to eat? And what do you want, my liege? So I guess kind of like kind of about Eileen and just how she's representative of a lot more, or maybe not. Kind of what you're trying to do with her character.
Yeah. Yeah. Eileen is just she's I mean this interesting, very interesting young white woman. I mean blonde, right? A platinum blonde. Um yeah, and who is like Andy's major test in life in a way. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, she's everything he wants. Like in a way, she's everything he wants. She's beautiful, she's blonde, she's caring. Yeah, we see aspect of all that from her and yeah, but in the end, she's just representative of this Western life, and yeah, and of course the violence of the West, and we see in their relationship how she subtly, very subtly, right, continues this kind of violence. So we say it and like yeah, and in what she desires in Andy, and we see the kind of like the tokenization, right? She's like he's
Mm,
just this black guy, and perhaps I mean she's just on holiday, right in the summer, and she just this experiment for her. I think in a
mm,
way he's just this experiment, and uh, and in many ways, whatever she represents this, I mean, this allure of the West and everything that he wants. I mean, she's been to all these wonderful places.
right, very worldly,
She's
yeah.
lived in Paris.
Hmm.
She's she's and I mean, lived the kind of life. I mean, she eats things that he dreams of eating. I mean, like
Mm.
I mean, she eats croissant for breakfast, you know, right? And he and it's like, oh, like he eats things like it's something like he would even want, he would want to even have the taste to know how it is, right?
Mm.
So the allure of the West and and also and this chimera too in a way, and this objects, whatever, this person or this thing that he wants, this wonderful life in the West that the West has sold to him the as a standard, the ideal. Yeah. I mean, the ideal sense of beauty, like she has to be, I mean, a woman has to be like slim, tall, blonde, white, everything. Like that is supposed to be how a beautiful person should be. And so just she asked me to examine all these different narratives and these complications and all that. Yeah. And she's a fun person to be with too. I mean, Andy has, I mean, some fun time with her too. I
Yeah.
hope. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, again, I love how you flip it on his face, like ideas of like tokenization and fetishization, right? Like
yeah,
he
felicitation.
he
Yeah,
he literally carries around a lock of her hair,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and
And
they're
how
part. Go
they
ahead.
both, yeah, and how they both actually fetishize each other. I mean, he
Yes,
fetishizes her and she too, him too, and some just one straight plain thing or no. And so I just wanted to examine those two aspects too together. I mean,
right.
the Africa versus the West, West versus Africa too at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Without, I'm really going to tiptoe around in a lot of plot, especially towards the end, because I mean, there's so many incredible themes, but also the plot is just so interesting and such a page turner. But the final scene, with her is there's a lot of emotional and frenzied scenes in the book. That's not one of them. But just the quietness of that scene is so affecting. It's like, oh man, it's so upsetting in a great reader way. For a reader, it's a great way to be upset. Just so skillful. There, of course,
thank
even
you.
with the party, there's obviously one of the themes is like the sectarian violence, I guess you call it, or religious violence, with the Muslims and Christians in the area. There are attacks on Andy himself, on Andy and the people around him. And that becomes a huge part of the book. And with that, Andy just talks about the curse of Africa, again with that pessimism. And there's always Zara and others, in his ear, like, hey, there are great things here, and futurism, etc. And we start to learn the secrets. The secrets start to unfurl as the book goes on. Like I said, it's just there are some crushing moments because of how well you play the plot. When you do the big reveals, um, it's very much ripped out of the news headlines in some ways, but also in some ways it's so timeless. Um, Again, I don't want to gloss over a lot of the plot, but I want people to read this book. I am just so impressed. You are, I want to say, late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah, I'm 29. I'll be 30 in August. Yeah.
I mean, the whole left brain, right brain. I mean, math. Math, all the incredible expertise you have in math, and then you write this book, which is going to be a classic. It's an instant classic.
Yeah, I hope so. I pray so.
Oh man, oh man, it's
Thank
gotten so
you.
much. It's gotten so much pub ahead of time, and I was expecting big things, and it went above and beyond. I really want to encourage people to buy this book, and there's a lot of discussions to be had. You could just rest on your laurels if you want. This book is incredible, and you put out in the world, and you could be done. But I wonder if maybe you have any ideas of any future projects.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I see myself as writer. I'm hoping to have, a long career writing, and as long as I continue to love the written word, I know, and yeah, there's just so much to write about. For my country, so much is happening every day, and like a lot of it is very, very heartbreaking stuff. I know,
Mm.
but for a writer, it just presents you so much amazing material. Like you are just so spoiled with like so many things to write about. Like, where would you start from, right?
Mm.
Um, yeah. So my next novel is going to be. So I'm just here at a kind of at a creative like crossroads, right? Like, oh, where am I going to go next and all that.
Mm.
But I just can't wait to just get back to writing my next novel. Yeah, and I've learned a lot. About myself and like developed a good routine, I think, and
Mm.
like a good way of thinking about crafts, about art in general. And I just can't wait to see like the next stage for myself. And to see how far I've come, how well I've developed, how well I've matured, and
Mm.
because I started writing this book around when I was like when I was 24 and all like and then now I'm now almost nearly 30, and I think I've grown in many ways. So I just can't wait to see how that reflects in my writing. Yeah.
Do you give yourself are you like a really structured writer? Do you give yourself like prompts every day, or is it more like, hey, whatever I see in the world, and I kind of I take that inspiration and run with it?
Yeah, so I'm still young. I'm still like just starting, right? Yeah, and like this book has challenged. many ways, the ways I used to think about craft, or I used to think about myself,
Mm,
like in connection to my craft. For example, before writing this book, I didn't know like I had like a range, this kind of range that I could write something like a book that could be termed to be satirical, that we call it tragicomedy and all
hmm.
that. Um, so so I'm just open to to seeing what comes around. I mean, I write a lot of notes. I write so many, like every day. I'm adding to my notes. Right, I have so many. When I'm not like writing creatively,
Mm.
um and like this book too. This book came from there's some strong planning. I planned some stuff and some things. I just wanted them to just happen organically to see
Hmm.
how how things come, because to discover many things. I mean, that is the fun, right? The fun is
Yeah.
discovering as you write and all that. So we see that, yeah. Just for me, I have to just try to discover more about myself as a writer
Yeah.
and as an artist. Yeah.
Well, if you read this book with a Catholic lens or with a religious lens, it's a great book. If you read it with, as a I'm gonna use the German word, Bildungsroman. If a coming of
Yeah.
age story is gonna satisfy those. If you read it strictly for the soap opera quality or the plot quality, you're gonna love it. If you read it for ideas of, Afrofuturism and ideas of the continent, you're gonna love it. So, such a just an incredible read, and I'm just amazed at how you put everything together, structurally, and made it one of those things where like the sum is more than its part. So, congratulations, and again, it's awesome talking to you. Thanks for letting us get into your brain a little bit and talk about rationale and background. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the kind words that you used to describe my book. And yeah, very, very honored. Yeah, and it's been a wonderful time. I mean, being here. I mean, just talking about books. Talking. I mean, I'm very passionate about literature, books, and all that. And it's like, yeah, so it's just a very, very good time spent, and all. Yeah, what a time well spent. Thank you so much.
Same. What better is there to talk about than books, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, yeah.
Thank
Something
you
that
so
just
much.
captures the word. Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. For those who are listening again, it's probably April 18th or so. Go get this book, The Five Sorrowful Mysteries of Andy Africa. Thanks again, Stephen. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, and do have a good day. Thank you.